I find that sometimes in my life, my desire to draw is higher than the frequency in which I get ideas. Many art challenges are audience-based or an attempt to turn drawing into a show, both of which I wouldn't be able to do. I need something to force me to be creative while also being repeatable. So I turned art making into a gacha game. I made a wheel full of these, and of course the characters themselves are picked randomly too. This time I added one more wheel which is full of various actions. I actually have more wheels I could use, but I chickened out. It is probably smarter to not confess to this, but I only started using the action wheel because it makes my job easier. So of course after all that I spun the wheels. The very first prompt turned out to be Pokemon Chloe examining. The action surprisingly matches the character very well, so my first time is going to be easy. Though despite that, I just made a sketch of my first idea and left it to simmer for a few days. I think I got up from trying to fall asleep to sketch it too. I don't know why I didn't just work on it. Don't question why she isn't just bringing her hand closer to her eyes. I honestly have no clue. I just thought it'd look cool. It's for the composition. You know what? She is on a trip with someone else and they only have one magnifying glass. So she brings her hand to the other person while using the magnifying glass herself. She's cute and sharing like that. Just don't worry about it. As I drew more of the pose, I was left in a predicament. I didn't want it to look like something I didn't intend to, but if I got rid of the cows, the visual balance became off. While debating about that, I realized that I drew the wrong hand. It was hard getting the same shape with the correct hand. Then I started another sketch layer and ended up forgetting her left leg exists. For some reason now the back of her skirt is her left leg. It is a short part of the time lapse, but I stared at it for at least a good 15 minutes to figure that out. I tried to fix her wonky arms, but they are still very flat. I also drew this little part near her hand to show its connection to the arm, but I end up erasing it because it looks weird, like she had three-limbed arms. I struggled with the head a lot, but boxes helped. I decided against making her wink, because I got ashamed of how many times I used something to avoid drawing eyes.
I started adding the lines, then I realized I forgot to draw the central point of the piece.
Luckily the Pokemon reference sheet had the exact angle I was drawing in, so I just drew it as is. I just want to mention that I have no idea what shape this part of the hair is. By this point, I was 5 hours in. I don't understand that either. Generally, the whole thing takes me around 5 hours. I was so confused. Maybe I duplicated the canvas from another work and simply forgot. After all this, I moved on to the shading phase. And I couldn't move anymore. I couldn't figure out any part of it, and especially how the arm would make a shadow on the body. I came back the other day and turned the whole pose into boxes to try the shadows on that. That also wasn't enough, so I hoped I could be saved by Magic Poser. All I got was that I don't even know where the light is actually coming from. At this point, I thought this piece was done for. I lowered my expectations and backed down from trying a background. I still hoped I could add some hints to it on the foreground, but that didn't happen either. I was just going to do a one-color cell shading and leave it at that. So I decided to ignore the arm shadow and went with the first one I tried. Since I never learned from my mistakes, I spent way more time than I should cleaning the shadows. I usually don't add highlight layers, but I tried adding it for once, and I actually really liked how I did the hair. But I had to erase it all because she has sakura-shaped highlights and they clashed. I put the shadow layer on Elf Lock and made the skin areas of armor color. I then airbrushed an even more saturated red to the transitions on the skin. I was done with everything and now I had to work on the part I dreaded the most, eyes. I got some pictures of green gems to use as a reference and started adding color. I really like using this complementary color thing on the eye highlights. This time I added them directly. I also added some hue variation in streaks. Overall, I surprisingly really liked how I did the eyes. It really helped boost my morale. The last time I drew them, there was already an intricate eye design for the character, so I just used that. This one did not, and that's why I pretended I didn't notice their existence up until the end. I added blush to her face and the fingers. I was applauding myself for doing such a good job at subtle blushes, then got suspicious a bit. Wanted to open up the layer menu and see that the blush layer was turned off. After everything was accomplished, I just tried to find mistakes wherever I could and attempted to fix them. She still has no kneecaps after all my attempts. While writing this, I realized it didn't look that incorrect if I just made the skirt cover up everything, so I fixed that after like weeks too. Overall, I was satisfied with this piece since it looked cute and the eyes turned out better than I expected. The hand being so close to the camera doesn't really make sense, but I always wanted to try it, so I'm glad I got to. Though while editing the thumbnail, I had to move it around and I noticed a grave mistake. I never flipped my canvas. Honestly, I don't think I will get into a habit of doing it because it's miserable on Procreate even with a quick menu. But the face looked so bad when I flipped it, I wanted to cry. I also found it really funny. I started it on December 10 and finished on December 15 and spent 8 hours 50 minutes on it in total. On an unrelated note, I found out why my images look dulled out on Discord. My canvases were in P3, which is for printing. Honestly, don't know why. I changed everything back to sRGB. I also tinkered a bit and found out that if you make the saturation of the converted canvas 60%, it matches the original pretty well. Right as I was done with the first one, I rolled for the next.
I got Mob Psycho, Musashi Goda, lecturing.
I was honestly thinking of re-rolling when I saw Mob Psycho, but luckily I stopped being dumb before it was too late, and realized other characters exist too. Someone else definitely wasn't as lucky as me because they added a share button to the wheels. Who needs that? It looks so ugly. It goes away on your second wheel, but I need it away all the time. I doodled something after thinking about it here and there once I spun the wheel. I didn't get up from the bed this time. The face is just a meme. Obviously I couldn't get the perspective I had in my head, so I just made it in Magic Poser. I love Magic Poser. I didn't bother making the pose since I thought I wouldn't need it. The next day I refined my pose a bit. I was undecided on whether I should get the character up on the canvas or not. I forgot the name for the stick he is holding, and had to find it by searching stuff like American Game, American Glove Sports, Sports played with special gloves. Then there was a news article about how gloves are special to the players, and that's when I found the name. It's a baseball bat. Before, all I could find was cricket bats. I thought I had gone insane, and baseball bats were all my imagination. After that, I didn't do anything for the next 10 days. When I came back to it, I started sketching a bit. I had a hard time making his face look tough, so I started shitposting. Shit drawing? I don't really know. I drew Chad faces all over. Now that I look back, the face looks tougher at this stage than at the end. I didn't really know how to draw the facial features since the source material is very stylized. I could just draw it as is, but I don't think I could pull it off. I think a lot of people underestimate how hard it is to make this kind of style look natural and good. Also, I turned off the time-lapse for a little bit accidentally. Thank God I didn't purge it. I'm so dumb. I was confused with the left turn, so I got help from Magic Poser. After doing the flat colors and a shadow test, I took another break from it, but this time it was intentional. I was just making a video. I wish I worked more on that. I don't think redoing it makes sense, and now it's forever awful. Here, once again, I am bearing the consequences of my actions. I haven't done a high amount of pieces, but every time I did one, I make the same mistake. Since I did a shadow test and the colors already, any change I added to it felt so insignificant. I don't have it in me to voice this journal entry, so I'll just leave it on the screen. It's been a while since I used anything other than a singular multiply layer, but I think using that overlay layer on the Pokemon piece unlocked something in me. I added a darker shadow layer for the areas that are pitch black. I don't know the names to these, and I won't learn for a while. I need to do other stuff first. I had a reflection light layer too. I just added it because everyone does. For the broken chalk, I probably should have drawn some type of dust around it on the board. I avoided drawing that chalk for a long time, for no reason as well. I was just vehemently against its existence. Once I flattened everything, I tried to add some Gaussian blur to the bat, but I don't think I got the effect I wanted. I added a cheap texture to it with this brush. I was going to look for references and fix it in detail, but when I saw the highlights and the texture I added randomly worked good enough, I just kept it as is. I was going to keep that one finger looking the stupidest a finger has ever looked, because I didn't want to use liquify since it dropped quality, and I didn't also want to drop it again, so I didn't touch it for the whole time, even though I noticed it from the start. I used liquify after I flattened all layers, and that way there wasn't a huge quality drop for some reason, so I made it a bit nicer. I posted it on a server with the second neck shadow being darker, but I erased some of it afterwards. This piece took 5 hours and 50 minutes in total between December 15 and January 4. For this one, I like the colors and just whole vibe, but I have a lot to complain about too. The background is too empty. The light source is confusing even to me, and I was the one who made it. The proportions are off. I never managed to get the head the right size. Feels like the body is not following the distorted camera lens.
I tried to draw a generic, simplified but realistic face for him, fully believing it'd work. It still looks too out of character.
And the hair on the left side is going into the cheek. I noticed it but didn't fix it. I just wanted to mention it since I flipped the canvas after the Pokemon incident and realized it looks even worse. But now that it's been a few days, I'll look at it and think that it still looks kinda nice. This is very off topic, but I want to briefly talk about the last video. Writing this script took me around a few months, mostly because all I could think about was how I was going to read them aloud later. The part about New Year's was just something I added at the end when I saw that I was so late that the year was ending. I recorded the audio in a rush, and at that point I really didn't want to record it again. Obviously, since I talk about New Year's, I couldn't pause it after, so I rushed the editing too. I ended up not having time to edit the second half. I'm really disappointed about it and have been thinking of ways I can salvage it. I think in the future I can make a separate video about how I plan my art studies and link it in the comments so the 1 or 2 people that want to both know about the recap and the advices can avoid the lackluster experience of the second part and watch a separate video instead.